Jack, and I'm here at the live room with John Davis from Conan. First of all, Conan have had a very busy tour schedule this year. Do you enjoy being on the road so much?
Yeah, I do. In a word, we've always tried to tour as much as possible ever since the very beginning. You know, remember the first time we played outside of Liverpool with Charger in like late 2010, and that was like a really big thing, something we've been pushing for a while, to try and break out of playing the Liverpool clubs, which I did for years and years and years in other bands that didn't really get anywhere. And we almost immediately started getting offered opportunities to tour and play. And for a year or so, it was just playing a weekend here and there. You know, we'd have a show Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, or maybe Friday, Saturday, and come home on a Sunday. And I really loved that. And then we got the opportunity to go and start touring around Europe. But of course, that brought its own problem then, because we had to get a van, so we invested a bit of money in an old Ford Transit, and I remember spending nearly £600 on installing this like cool sound system in there so that we could listen to Iron Maiden on the road full blast, like speakers like right by our heads in the bulkhead. And there's something about being on the road, and every day you're looking forward to playing the music that you've written, and the lure of like seeing the reaction of people who are listening to your music that you've written, sometimes easily, sometimes songs will come together when they've been difficult to write. I've always found it really rewarding to play music, and you know, whether I'm on my own or whether in the practice room with the lads or whether on stage. And like I remember when I was like 16, promising myself that I would do this, telling myself that I would, you know, I'm going to play music, because I saw playing music as really like a long-term thing that I would be in charge of. I never really wanted to work for anyone else. I always wanted to do music, and I remember as like a shy and less than confident teenager thinking, this is a path to like, you know, I can really grow, like, and you know, I'll really enjoy this, and it's something I can do for the rest of my life, hopefully.
Of course.
When I get too old to lug cabs, I'll just pick up an acoustic and do something with that. So getting on the road has been something we've loved from day one. And now, you know, we're touring all over the world. You know, like this year already, we've had a US tour for 5 weeks. We've been to Japan for a week. And we got more like far-flung shows lined up for the end of the year, which I can't announce yet, but they're in the process of being dealt with. And plus European tours, plus another UK tour, and we've got an album out soon, and it's just love it. I couldn't do anything else now. If I had to have an office job, I'd probably commit suicide. Seriously.
What made Monolord the perfect match for this tour, and will you be back in Ireland again soon?
We wanted to be on tour with a band as physically attractive as us, and we've finally done it with Monolord. Seriously though, they're a really cool band. They really good people to tour with. They're professional, friendly, interesting people. You know, they come from a different culture to ours, and we enjoy being on the road with them. We're not sharing a van with them, although we have done. We shared a nightliner with them in October last year. And I mean, we didn't know what to expect then, because we didn't really know them very well on that tour, but we got along really well. They're all like from a different culture, but very similar people at the same time. You know, at the core of what we all are is a love for music, and they put their money where their mouth is, you know, in terms of that. They also like to tour a lot. They release great music, and they're a really good live act. So when you're choosing a band to tour with, you know, our booking agent puts forward bands, and it was really natural, really, that us and Monolord would tour together. And it's cool that we get to do like this joint headline thing where we switch headliners each night.
Yep.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, I don't think we've ever toured with a band that we didn't really like. Some more than others, obviously, but like we really love these guys. They're cool as fuck.
I suppose it's an interesting parallel between both bands having 3 members. You get to see how another 3-piece perform every single day.
Yeah, that's true.
Tell us about the origin of the band name and how you guys have created a genre known as Caveman Battle Doom.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, the Conan, we could have been called anything really, from like 80s, 70s science fiction or sword and sorcery movies. You know, Krull was one idea that I had for a band name. Very briefly, I thought about that. We could have been called, like, we were called Elf Beater for a while in our practice room bookings. That's obviously an awful name, so we were never going to use that one long term. But Conan just came to me one day, you know, as I was like just going through some personal stuff, and I'd had to move in with my parents for a little while, and I started this band up with an old friend of mine who was a bass player, but he played drums a little bit. So we started, and we actually wrote and recorded Satsuma, which we play today, and we had these songs, and we didn't really have a settled name. We were going to call ourselves Pazuzu for a little while, or Demon Damaro. There's like a Bebo page committed to Debo in that name, actually, with some really old demos, if you can search for that. And initially I wanted it to be a little bit like occultish type of stuff, and then quickly I realised the lyrics weren't going really in that direction, and we were more about like sword and sorcery and science fiction and mythology. And then I remember sitting there one day just kind of thinking, what can I do for a band name? And it just came to me. And it stuck. You know, there wasn't any other bands. Well, there was like an Argentinian like metal band called Conan, but I think they'd expired in the 80s, you know.
Yeah.
So there was no current band, you know, within our sort of like scene with that name or anything close to it. So just grabbed it with both hands. I can't remember the second part of the question now. What was the second bit?
The second part was, how did the name Caveman Battle Doom come around? When was the first time you started hearing people say that?
Okay, the very first show that Conan did in Liverpool was with friends of ours and mine, John McNulty and Gemma McNulty. They weren't married then, but they are now, and they're really close friends of mine and the band. They recorded at the studio, but they put on our first ever show when it was just me and Paul O'Neill, two-piece. And on the poster for that show, it says, I think it said Primitive Battle Doom or Caveman Battle Doom or Caveman Doom. And the label that we, fast forward a few months, we recorded Horseback Battle Hammer, and we released it on CD with Aurora Borealis Records. And they use that phrase Caveman Battle Doom as part of their sales pitch, you know, on like the website. Like obviously just taking it from that first ever gig poster, and we thought, I'll tell you what, we'll make a t-shirt with that on it, you know, because it kind of looks cool and it sounds good. And this t-shirt just sold like fucking hotcakes, so we thought that's a cool like name to kind of like make a joke about. Obviously we haven't created our own genre. It'd be awesome if we did, because we'd obviously like make loads of money then, wouldn't we? But it's just a bit of fun.
I know yourself, you're involved in Black Bow Records, and Chris is involved in Skyhammer. How did both of those projects come around? Was it through the band this became something you were interested in, or what was the path towards a label and a studio?
Okay, when I moved into a large house in rural location not far from Liverpool or Chester, and there was like a couple of extra buildings. One of those buildings was like a large coach house. And I actually wanted to turn that into a rehearsal studio initially, but it needed a lot of building work, which cost a lot of money. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could somehow turn this into something that would repay some of that investment. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do like a practice room, and then I may be able to rent the practice room out to bands. And then I thought, I don't want people who, I don't think that would generate enough money to make it worthwhile. And unless we had people in there all the time, and if we did that, it could just be like people in there for 2 or 3 hours at a time, and it would be a bit of a nightmare to manage, you know, with it being like the home. Then I then thought of, well, I'll tell you what, I'll turn it into a recording studio. So I got some quotations for layout and stuff like that, and it became obvious then that it was going to be really expensive to do. So I thought, well, I'll do that, and then I'll see if I can maybe learn the ropes. You know, I might work in there myself as a recording engineer. I have an extremely short-lived time recording bands in their practice rooms. I actually did one band, and they asked for a refund. So I thought, well, maybe I need to practice a little bit more. So I was going to set up the studio. I decided not to in the end when Chris got in touch. And me and Chris have been friends, and I was asking him about what microphones to get and what stuff do we need really to start a studio. And me and Chris got chatting, and then one day out the blue, in the evening, he wrote to me and said, I've got this really crazy idea, can I give you a ring? So I said okay, and he gave me a call and we had a chat about it. And Chris's idea was that would come and work in the studio, you know, take over the studio and run it. And I waited a little bit, spoke to my wife then, and in the morning we chatted again, and it became obvious that it was going to be a great idea. And Chris and I started working in the studio from August 2013. The build started in May the same year. We had a company called Studio People do it, and they were brilliant. And the first band in there were called Bast, and they came into the studio. They didn't have a label. I think they'd been talking to Candlelight, but I don't think anything had been agreed at that point. So they recorded this album called Spectres, and I said, why don't I just release it for you? And it was cool to release the first thing ever recorded at the studio, you know. And that album did quite well. I had to repress it, and then another band come in, and I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll release theirs as well. And then I spoke to Fista and Norska from America. I did a 7-inch split. Before you know it, I'm releasing music for bands from all over, and it's just snowballed. I didn't expect it to, and I didn't really try very hard, actually, to be honest. I'm still learning all the time about running the label, you know, make mistakes all the time, but I love it, and it kind of fits in nicely with the band, fits in nicely with the studio, and I'm able to like really diversify within music now, because obviously everyone has to earn a living somehow, and you don't, unless you're very lucky, you can't earn a living just from the band. Some people can, I can't, so I have to add other things on that make it possible to pursue a career in music. So that's all I do now, thankfully.
It's very good how you had a location where you could bring a band in, record their album and be able to release it as well. You have all those tools that you can do the whole package for whoever needs it. It's
almost like a cottage industry, as they call it.
Yeah.
You know, they create the music, Chris records it, and then I sell it to the people. You know, it works really well.
It's flawless. Another thing is, you guys feature heavily in the upcoming documentary, The Doom Doc, which is due out in summertime. How important is a documentary like that for promoting the underground?
I think it's cool because it engages with people who may not necessarily have checked out the bands that are being talked about on it. It gives a good overview of what the scene is like, and it's something that you can take all around the world. You know, we're friends with Joe Allen, one of the lads who made the documentary, and we played in Japan with him recently, his band Kurokuma.
Yep.
And we played a sellout show in Tokyo at this venue called Earth Dome, which hadn't sold out for 10 years or so.
Wow.
And part of the reason why it sold out so well is because the documentary was really popular over there. And it's really cool because it's shone a light on the very grassroots level, you know, heavy music in the UK and beyond. And I don't think a documentary's done that really for UK heavy music, you know, the grassroots level of it. I don't recall it. Well, I've never seen a movie that's done that. Obviously, in America, you got Such Hawks, Such Hounds, and you got Slow Southern Steel, I think it is. Was it? Maybe that's a Pantera album. But that's there's an album which is about the NOLA scene in America. It's good that something like that's been made in England, you know.
That's what I find about that documentary in particular, how there's been a lot of stuff made about the bigger bands, but no one's ever went down to the grassroots level and saw what is the underground doing, who are these bands, who are the venues, and thought it was a really great insight.
Yep.
But finally, you have your next album, Existential Void Guardian, coming out in August. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's all recorded and mastered now. We're just waiting on a video getting done for one of the songs, and I'm not going to give any of the song titles away, obviously, but like, it's cool. It's heavy as fuck, and we're really proud of it. It's the first album that we've done with Johnny on drums, and it was quite a challenging album to make because, well, if we'd have had anyone else on drums, I don't think we'd have been able to manage it. But fortunately, Johnny, being as professional he is he come in after touring with us for 1 month, and like it was like just practicing a riff here and there and sound checks, and we sat down in the studio and we kind of wrote the drum parts of the album within like a week or weekend, even like maybe 3 or 4 days. So it was like it come together like much. It wasn't easy, but the fact that it came together at all was a miracle, because we didn't allow ourselves the usual amount of time for writing an album. So we pushed ourselves to the limit to get it written and get it to a level that we were really happy with, because we wouldn't have released otherwise, you know.
Of course.
We wrote the drums and guide guitar and stuff in the first few sessions, and then we kind of went back and recorded guitar and bass, and then when we come back from Japan we did vocals. So it came together in a different way to all the other albums. Like maybe Revengeance was a bit like that, but everything up until then it was like the product of like weekly practices and like for an hour or two every week for maybe a couple of times a week. So we're kind of getting into this vein now where we're writing music, you know, almost like as soon as we sit down we get together and we can all play and we can write music together. It's really cool. I think a lot of that's to do with Johnny, because he's got a particular style which is really blends in with what me and Chris are doing. But yeah, it comes out, well, it was going to be the end of August now, but the label the other day mentioned that it's coming out in the middle of September. They got a couple of other releases which I think clash with it, and they didn't want to have too many on the same day apparently. So, but yeah, Tony Roberts is doing the artwork like most people would expect. Like the artwork's cool, and we've got a really good video coming out, which I'm not gonna. I mean, it's been done by the same people who shot the Faux Hammer video. But I gave them this like idea of what I'd like them to try and do with this next video, and it's insane. Off camera I'll show you it. I think you'll like it, and it's everything I would ever want from a Conan video. It's so sick. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, man. It's been a pleasure having you all here, and I wish you all the best for the album and your future.
Thank you.
Cheers.